Hello, good crowd. We're back here today on World Polio Day at Rotary International headquarters in Evanston, Illinois. And we are so fortunate to have with us John Hewko, who is the General Secretary and CEO of Rotary International. He is the top paid executive that runs the organization day to day, day in, day out, 365, an incredible human being. You don't want to miss this episode.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Our sponsor, Johnson & Johnson, matches most individual donations up to $250 at caringcrowd.org. John, welcome to the show.
Devin, thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming back. I'm here on your turf. Thanks for hosting us today, but it is an honor to have you back on the show. Third or fourth time, and we're thrilled to have you. So,
well, thanks for having me again.
You've now been with Rotary in this role, although your role has recently changed a little bit, for about 8 years.
Right.
And just this year, I think you were given the additional title of CEO.
That's right.
Did that change your role in any way?
I think it did in the sense of external facing. It's obviously when I'm dealing with people outside of Rotary, it was a little easier to understand. It's Chief Executive Officer than General Secretary. But in terms of my day-to-day obligations, my work here at Rotary, it really didn't affect that at all.
Now, you have personally taken the fight to polio with real zeal. This isn't just something you're paid to do. Maybe the best manifestation of that is your 8 runs through the Tour De Tucson, or I probably got that name wrong, but tell us about that bike ride that you do every year.
Well, again, as you mentioned, polio is obviously Rotary's signature global initiative. It's really extraordinary that back in 1985, a nonprofit, not a government agency, not a multilateral, had the audacity to say we're going to eradicate a disease from the face of the earth. And as you know, we're very, very close to getting there. Just 2 countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, where the wild polio virus is still circulating. And so one of the things that Rotary brings to the table is, in addition to the advocacy and the sort of boots on the ground, in other words, Rotarians going around the world vaccinating children against polio, is fundraising. And about 8 years ago, I ran into a group of Rotarians from Tucson on a water taxi at our convention in Bangkok. And they knew I was an avid cyclist, and they came up to me and said, there's this bike ride called Tour De Tuscon in Tucson. It's held every year the weekend before Thanksgiving, and gets about 7,000 to 9,000 riders, and a lot of organizations use that ride as a fundraising vehicle. And so the local Rotarians had started sort of riding in Old Tour, raising money for polio, because again, Rotarians, we've contributed over $2 billion to the polio eradication effort, and that's a lot of pancake days, a lot of walkathons, a lot of bike rides, and so they were raising modest amounts of money for polio, and they said, can you join us? And so I got sort of engaged our team here in Evanston, used my own bully pulpit, and I think that first year I rode, it's a 106-mile ride around the perimeter of Tucson, the city of Tucson. I think we raised like $250,000 that first year. The next year, well over $1 million. And of course, everything we raise is matched 2 to 1 by the Gates Foundation. So I've been participating for about 8 years now, and obviously all kinds of Rotarians around the world come and join us. We get a little over 100 Rotarians joining the ride, plus we have virtual rides around the world. So with the Gates match, over the last decade, that L2 to Tucson ride and polio, we've raised over $53 million for polio. So it's been a very, very successful event, and we're delighted to be able to help.
You are young and healthy. Do you attribute that entirely to your bike riding?
Well, I mean, I enjoy fitness. I was a very good lacrosse player in college, and an ice hockey. I played ice hockey as an adult, and used to do quite a bit of running. And then it got slowed down a bit with some arthritis. So I switched to biking, and so it's a great way to both stay in shape and also now to be able to raise some money for polio.
You and I are about the same age. I just look like your father, but I'm impressed by your good health. So you're a great role model to all of us. As you think about polio from an institutional standpoint, looking back over what you've seen and what you've learned about what happened before you came as the CEO, General Secretary, what are the milestones that you think about that have accomplished and that are next in the battle?
Well, obviously, number one, we need to eradicate polio, and that's sort of front and center of every Rotarian around the world. Organizationally, it's our number one priority, and until we get the job done, until we've really eradicated this disease, really the second time in history the disease has been eradicated, that remains our number one focus, and we need to continue moving in that direction. As an organization, generally, we're trying to we're now rolling out our new strategic plan, which really is trying to take Rotary into the next 100 years and sort of provide the guidance and the path to move forward. I'm very excited that we're now looking at additional avenues of participating in Rotary beyond joining a Rotary club. As you know, we have 1.2 million Rotarians around the world. 70% of our Rotarians are now outside of North America. We work in 9 languages. We publish in 30-some. So we truly are a global multinational platform. And the way you become a Rotarian is by joining one of our 36,000 clubs around the world, as you and I and others have done. Yeah. And what we're trying to do with our strategic plan, among other things, is to really explore new ways of participating in Rotary that doesn't involve joining a Rotary club. So we're looking at perhaps rolling out a global membership option. So you become a member of Rotary International globally, and rather than joining a local Rotary club. And of course, the challenge is what's the value proposition we're going to offer people to do that: mentoring, networking, the ability to travel the world and do international service projects. These are all sort of elements we hope to build into this new global model. We've also elevated something called a Rotaract. We have, in addition to Rotary clubs, we have what are called Rotaract clubs. And today they're designed for people between 18 and 32 years old. Although I think we're going to loosen up the age upper limit as to being a Rotaractor. And what we've recently done is really elevated these Rotaract clubs to, in effect, equal status to our Rotary clubs. And I personally would love to be able to grow our Rotaractors to equal number of Rotarians, 1.2 million, and really create this global, multi-generational platform of 2.5 million people, to really continue to make the world a better place.
Yeah. You highlighted appropriately polio as being the premier program or effort of Rotarians around the world. And to a person, I think Rotarians can tell you that's the number one thing. But in fact, Rotary is much more, so much more. Tell us about Rotary and share with us in that context of explaining Rotary. Go back to your days in Ukraine. Right. When you were, I think you were a club president in Ukraine. Tell us about what's Rotary like around the world, especially for those who are watching that aren't Rotarian.
Yeah, absolutely right, Devin. The Rotary is so much more than polio. We run one of the largest youth exchange programs in the world. 9,000 students every year on long-term exchanges are sponsored by Rotary. And that's not just people coming to the United States or Americans going abroad. It's Zimbabweans going to Brazil. It's Taiwanese going to Slovakia. And so we run really one of the largest youth exchange programs in the world. Every year we offer 100 full scholarships to do master's and certificate programs in peace and conflict studies at 7 universities around the world that we partner with. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our Rotarians are involved in a myriad of projects, local, regional, international, through our Rotary Foundation. And our foundation last year raised almost $400 million. Through our Rotary Foundation, we provide grants to Rotary clubs to do projects in water and sanitation, disease prevention and treatment, maternal and child health, literacy, water and sanitation, community development. And so last year, I think we gave 1,400 grants to Rotary clubs to do significant projects of scale in what we call our 6 areas of focus. That's what we sponsor out of the Rotary Foundation. But Rotary clubs themselves raise money locally and get involved in all kinds of local activities. And that's the beauty of Rotary. When you join a Rotary club, you can be very active locally in your community if that's what you'd like to do. Mm-hmm. You can be active internationally, doing international projects. If you're, let's say, an American and you want to do a water project in Zimbabwe, you're able to engage in those kinds of activities, and you're also able to participate in a truly global effort to eradicate polio. So Rotarians do extraordinary work locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally.
That's a great introduction to Rotary, and I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things you mentioned is the Rotary Foundation, and of course, all the donations for the fight against polio go to the Rotary Foundation. And then those are matched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, 2-to-1, which is exciting. All that money pours in with other monies contributed for other purposes into the Rotary Foundation. And then you talked about the 1,400 grants that you make to the different Rotary clubs, and you didn't mention, but of course you're then spending all that money that you've raised for polio as in addition to the club grants. One of the things that strikes me as most remarkable about the foundation is not its size, but how it sort of punches above its weight class, right? So the Rotary Foundation is giving away 25 or 30% of its assets every year. Now, it does that because it can raise that much money, but it's a remarkable thing where many foundations at the scale of the Rotary Foundation, are giving away 5%. The minimum required is in really a maximum for a lot of foundations. How does that work? How is Rotary able to play so much above its weight class?
Well, first of all, we run a very efficient operation. We've been rated 4 stars by Charity Navigator for many, many years. And so our efficiency ratings are very, very, very high. And secondly, we are a membership organization. Our members are large, make up a large portion of our donor base, and so we raise this money and we grant it back out to our clubs to make and do good in the world. So I think it's a combination of our philosophy. I mean, we raise money to spend it and make and do good, but we're also highly efficient and do a very good job. And again, it's all again part of that sort of ethos in Rotary. When Rotary was originally established, it was I call it the original LinkedIn. Before anybody heard of LinkedIn. In other words, community leaders getting together to network professionally, and then that sort of service component was added to the Rotary ethos. And today I'd like to say we're sort of the intersection between commerce and cause. I talked earlier in the interview about you join a Rotary Club to do good, both locally, regionally, or internationally. But you also join a Rotary Club to network professionally, for the friendships, for the fellowship, using Rotary terminology. So I think it's this really interesting organization, it's kind of the intersection between commerce and cause. And because historically we've been made up of business leaders in the community, this whole ethos of operating effectively, efficiently, sort of spills into everything we do, including our Rotary Foundation and how we run things.
Circling back to where we started, you've been at Rotary now a little over 8 years.
Right.
What are you most proud of having accomplished since you came?
Oh, I think it's on a number of different levels. I think from an organizational point of view, in terms of the secretariat, meaning the professional staff, I think we made great strides in professionalizing how we operate, the way we're structured, becoming much more efficient, providing greater value to our Rotarians. We've gone through a huge rebranding exercise. We've dramatically improved our website. We've improved the technological products that we offer to Rotarians, and then we've done some significant staffing restructurings to be more effective, to be more efficient. Obviously, the strides we've made in polio is something, as a professional staff, we're able to support our Rotarians and make that happen. That's something we're very, very proud of. And I think we've done a much better job of promoting Rotary as an institution around the world. I mean, historically, the Rotary ethos was we let our good work speak for ourselves. It was viewed as bad form to be sort of promoting the organization, promoting yourselves. We do our good works. We're doing this for the right reasons to do good in the world. And and as the world has changed, and as there is obviously many more opportunities for people to participate in these sorts of activities, and as the challenges for fundraising continue to increase, we've made a significant pivot to say we really need to do a better job to sell our story, which is an extraordinary story. And so I'm very proud of the fact that we've really made significant strides in the communication space to make Rotary not just, I've heard of Rotary, but to have people realize exactly what we do and the scope of what we do, and have Rotarians receive the credit they deserve for the extraordinary work they do, not just in polio, but in all those other things I talked about earlier in the interview.
Yeah. You have had an extraordinary career. Super well educated, Harvard lawyer, Harvard-trained lawyer, and you've had tremendous international experience practicing law and working for the Bush administration at a senior level. And of course, 8 years running Rotary. You're a big deal. What is the most important lesson you've learned over that career that you'd share with us?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that do not be afraid of challenges, both whether it be professionally, personally, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. In my professional career, it was largely in the former Soviet Union. I was one of the first Western lawyers to relocate to the Soviet Union, still during Gorbachev's time, during Perestroika. And people were saying, well, that's crazy. Why would you sort of throw away a good track career back in Washington to go to to that space? It was a huge challenge. It was a huge challenge building up the practices both in Moscow, and then I moved to Ukraine and in the Czech Republic. But no risk, no reward. And so, sort of stepping off the cliff without a parachute, not knowing whether it's going to open or not, can be daunting. But it can be extremely rewarding as well. Similarly, when I left very lucrative law practice to join the Bush administration, we were setting up a new agency from the beginning. They called the Millennium Challenge Corporation. And it was a federal agency that Bush established to deliver U.S. foreign assistance in a very new and different way. And I sort of took off my legal hat, and I was the vice president for operations, which meant I was the chief U.S. negotiator for these foreign assistance agreements that we were entering into with our partner countries. And again, a huge challenge to set up an agency from scratch. We had a lot of money from Congress. I think we got $1 billion that first year with 10 people, and you sort of do a job while you're staffing up an agency from scratch. And then similarly, coming to Rotary and the challenges of if taking the organization continuing to take the organization in a better direction, our challenge against polio. And so for me, it's just been, if you really put your mind to it, just about almost every obstacle can be overcome. Yeah. And again, no risk, no reward. And for me, that's really resonated personally. It sounds cliche-ish, but it's actually quite true.
Well, there's a risk reward you're talking about there, but there's something else going on in your career that we see evidenced in a couple of steps, especially with your choice to come to Rotary, and again we saw it repeated with your choice to join the Bush administration in the Millennium Development Corporation, and it is this willingness to give up financial remuneration to have an impact, to make a difference in the world. What drives that for you?
I think my parents came to the United States as refugees. They fled Ukraine during the Second World War. As the Soviet Army was moving through, they fled west, spent 4 to 5 years in refugee camps in southern Germany, and then 1949 my mother came came in 47. My father came in 49 to the States, really with nothing. Classic, typical American, typical immigrant story. And for me, it's the extraordinary thought that here my parents came with nothing, and they were able to send their son to Harvard, Oxford, Hamilton College, and a daughter to Northwestern, and another son to the University of Michigan, all sort of in one generation. So the country had been extraordinarily good to us. And so yes, I had a very successful, very lucrative law practice with Baker and McKenzie in running a number of the offices in East Central and Eastern Europe. But I wanted to give back. I wanted to give back to the country, which had opened its arms to my parents and grandparents, and had really allowed our family to do extraordinarily well. And so that was really the motivation to go into the Bush administration, particularly given that my job there was to create this new foreign assistance agency. And I had really, when I was in Eastern Europe, appreciated the value that well carried out foreign assistance can have, and particularly MCC's focus of how can we use development assistance to create the conditions for a thriving economy to flourish, for sustainable economic growth. That was a very interesting concept for me. How do we use development assistance to lay the groundwork for the private sector to come in and to develop sustainable economic growth and wean countries off of international development? So that was really the motivation for going into the administration. And then when President Obama won, as a political appointee, you become, as our friends say across the pond, redundant.
Yeah.
And so, what do I want to do next? I didn't want to go back to. I didn't want to go back till I'd really liked this sort of doing good, for lack of a better term, activity. And then this opportunity to come to Rotary came up, and which is also an interesting story because I was thinking, what do I want to do next? My father is a very active Rotarian, and he's a very avid reader of the Rotarian magazine. And so he was reading through one of the magazines one day, and he saw that there was an ad in the magazine that Rotary was looking for a new general secretary. So he tears it out and then writes across the corner, John, you seem like you have the qualifications for this. You might want to check this out, and mailed it to me. And I still have that letter framed in my office on the wall. And I saw it, and I realized that the search firm that Rotary was using was a search firm we had used at MCC to staff up the agency. So I called up the head of the DC office of the firm, and I said, Charlie, I just saw this. Should I throw my hat in the ring? He goes, I hadn't thought of you, but I think you'd be a great candidate. And so it was all sort of history from there. But I think I learned two important lessons from that, Devin. Mm-hmm. One is always listen to your father.
Good tip.
And the second is really good things happen when you read the Rotarian magazine. So,
sure.
There's a bit of serendipity that got me to Rotary, but the motivation was really a carryover from what I had been doing at MCC to really continue to try to make a difference. You know, and that for me has a value that goes well beyond just financial remuneration.
Yeah. John, what is your superpower?
My superpower? Oh, I don't think I have. I don't think I have superpowers. I do think, like any human being, I've got strengths and weaknesses, and I think one of my strengths is I do think I have an ability to sort of grasp a strategic vision, and then sort of rally people around to try to achieve that. And take people with disparate points of view and different perspectives, and get them to kind of get to yes, and then move the ball forward. Which is what makes this job so interesting, because it is such a diverse.
You mean there are people in Rotary that have a different perspective?
Absolutely. 1.2 million Rotarians, 1.4 million points of view. It's about as diverse as you can get, and I think it's on the one hand a challenge, but for me kind of an exciting thing, and I think one where given my international experience, language skills, it's kind of like trying to run the UN, on a much smaller scale, and I find it both interesting, intriguing, and challenging.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. John, thank you so much for making time. I know your day is really busy, World Polio Day today, and a lot going on with board meetings and all the rest. Before you go, would you take just a moment and tell people how they can learn more about Rotary?
Sure. As I said, we have 36,000 clubs around the world. There probably isn't a community in the world that doesn't have a Rotary club. Rotary.org, just go to Rotary.org, and there's a place where it's called Membership Leads. You can sort of, first of all, you can find out about our organization, what we do through the foundation, through Rotary International. There's something called Membership Leads, where you can sort of send in a message saying you're interested in connecting with the local Rotary club, and we'll make sure we get you connected there. If not, there's certainly a club locator where you can find the clubs in your area, and you feel free to reach out to those clubs in the area and indicate an interest in joining a Rotary club. You won't regret it.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you very much again for taking the time to be with us today, and we wish you every success in your effort to eradicate polio.
Thank you. Thanks, Devin. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's do some.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.